Slavery existed more than 1,000 years before the Atlantic trade, but it did not operate the same way. Long before Europeans crossed the ocean, trans-Saharan networks were already moving enslaved people across Africa and into the Middle East. Historians estimate millions were transported over the centuries. Some estimates reach as high as 8 million, from roughly the 7th to the 19th century. But the rules and beliefs shaping these systems were different from what later developed in the Americas. 3 major forms dominated. First, household slavery. Enslaved people often lived within elite homes or royal courts. Some were trained in administration, crafts, or scholarship. Skills didn't mean freedom, but they did mean something different from plantation field labor. People were still legally owned and could be bought or sold. This was not benevolent. It was structurally distinct. Second, military slavery. The most famous example is the Mamluk Sultanate. Boys taken from outside the Islamic heartlands were converted, trained as elite cavalry, and initially enslaved. But here's the twist. They could rise through the ranks. And not symbolically, Mamluks ruled Egypt and parts of the Levant for nearly 300 years. Formerly enslaved soldiers became sultans. Third, heredity. In many Islamic legal systems, enslaved status was not automatically permanent across generations. Children were often born free, especially if the father was free. That stands in sharp contrast to Atlantic chattel slavery, where status was racialized and inherited for life. This earlier system was not built on modern racial categories. Muslims, Christians, and others enslaved one another depending on war, debt, or geography. Identity often revolved around religion and political status rather than skin color. But clarity matters. People were still bought and sold. Families were separated. Autonomy was stripped. It was not racialized in the Atlantic sense, but it was still slavery. Both statements are true. When the Atlantic system emerged, it hardened slavery into a racial caste system with permanent inherited status. That transformation reshaped global history. So here is the question. What stands out more to you, the mobility possible in the Mamluk system or the permanence of Atlantic slavery? Drop it below. Best analysis gets pinned. Follow for the next episode, How the Atlantic Trade Transformed Slavery into Race.